Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Storytime Clinic. I am so excited to have with me here today Miss Iva Ballou. Iva, welcome to the show.
Thank you for so much for having me. Thank you to the audience also for listening to this episode. Thank you.
Absolutely. This episode has been a long time in the making. So I did a podcast episode on Cleft palate way back maybe July of last year or so. And as soon as that episode came out, one of my friends called me up and she was like, "You have to get my friend Iva Ballou on your show."
Thanks, Jam.
So I'm so glad. Exactly. Thank you, Jamila Best, for making this happen. So I'm so glad to finally have you on the show. Iva
Thank
Ballou
you so much.
Yes, absolutely. Iva is a Cleft confidence coach and transformational speaker who uses her gift of speaking and coaching as a tool to boost confidence in those with facial differences. She is the founder of RealSophisticatedJoy, a company that empowers those affected by cleft and craniofacial differences to pivot from contempt to confidence in their cleft journey so they can live a life filled with real sophisticated joy. Wow, Iva, that is such a beautiful statement. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you. Real Sophisticated Joy came out of my own struggle growing up with a cleft, having well over 30 surgeries because I had a bilateral cleft lip and palate. So I'm kind of a unicorn, and I know the shame that a lot of cleft affected go through as far as bullying, rude comments, even in adulthood, not wanting to do public speaking, just all of it. And once I had gotten to the point where I had my own sense of confidence and joy and, was able to move through this world differently, I wanted to help other cleft affected feel the same because there's not a lot of support for us, especially past that age of 18.
I think that's beautiful. I think, turning your experiences and, your struggles and also what you have learned, your victories as well, into a tool that you could use to help other people. I think that's so powerful. Tell us a little bit, what is cleft palate and cleft lip and cleft palate for anyone who doesn't know and listening to this?
Yes. So the perfect way to explain it is in utero, or when the baby is in the womb. If it's a cleft lip, that means that your outer lip, there can be on one side an opening, or if it's a bilateral, that means that there are two openings, meaning that the lip is not fully formed. If it is a cleft palate, the best way to explain it is one of my fellow cleft friends, Ashley, said it so eloquently. If you've ever eaten peanut butter and it's gotten stuck to the roof of your mouth, that is your palate. So imagine being born with it either being a small hole or, in some cases like mine, completely gone. You need that.
Wow.
It's you're missing basically the roof of your mouth. You need that. It affects your ears, your nose, your throat, all of these things. So yeah.
Wow. And you said that you had over 30 different surgeries. That's so much. Is this something that you were going through kind of all through your childhood? Was this kind of right when you were a young child?
So, and I will admit, I've had more than most. I will admit that maybe like the last 10 to 5 were because of my own inner search of perfection that wasn't realistic, but it was over the course of my entire childhood. I followed the typical cleft palate and lip track of having your first one at like 6 months, and then you'll have another one between 9 to a year. Then you might maybe not have one again until maybe 5, and then I had the big one, which we call like the bone graft, which they take literally some fat and a graft from your hip. I still have the scar to this day. It's kind of nice sometimes. It's just to see where I've come from. But I had that at 10, and that's a really major surgery. Then 15, or it was my sophomore year, either my sophomore or freshman year of high school. I had my jaw like cut in half and closed shut. I was like Kanye West, mouth wired shut for 3 months, drinking inshore for, for dinner and syrup for breakfast. It really was a thing. You learn all the different ways to have many different foods. And thank gosh, my mother was very experimental. Some things were great, some things were not. And then many rhinoplasties because for me, my cleft went all the way up to like my nose, my eye. I have Peters anatomy, meaning that I'm blind in my left eye. A lot of people don't know that. And so just always, like I said, the last 5 or 10 of them, they were probably on my own, trying to get that perfection.
Tell us a little bit about why you went down that route and why you felt like you needed to do that.
Just lack of self-confidence. Pure, utter lack of self-confidence, and a lot of cleft affected individuals, we do discuss the fact that it's hard for us to look into the mirror because, especially for me, on the inside, I was this gorgeous, beautiful woman. And yeah, I was a woman. I was always a woman. Even at the age of 5, I was a woman.
Oh, goodness.
I knew that I was fat. Sophisticated is in the name for a reason. I was that before I knew what that was. But it was very hard when I would look in the mirror and, like Mulan said, when is my reflection going to reflect who I feel inside? And so those surgeries was my attempt to try to match them up. It was my attempt to try to match up my image of myself on the outside. And it was the last surgery that I had, which ironically was after college. So I'm well into my 20s. And it wasn't perfect. I still wasn't perfect. And I was just like, oh, I can't keep doing this. Something else so we got to figure out something else. And started going on this path of, well, maybe if I change something on the inside, I can change myself. And that's where that inner confidence started to come and things started to change on the inside. And it's almost like for those of you who work out, it's how you can lose weight and gain muscle at the same time, and your body will look different. That's how I liken it to my cleft. I have the same face that I had before, but it comes off different somehow because I'm different on the inside. I have this confidence within myself and have the same face, but I don't, if I do get stares, I don't recognize them as much. People don't stare as much, or something that I just never thought would happen. This is not a brag. It's just a comparison of, I remember when I was living in DC, I would walk to work and there was a week where like every day somebody was like, oh my gosh, you're so pretty. You're so pretty. You're so pretty. And at the end of the week, I was just like, wow. There was a time when I would have loved for someone to tell me that. And to now it just happened. It just, I don't know. I was overwhelmed because I never thought myself as beautiful. I never thought myself as gorgeous. And now just, that's what it is.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
That's the joy coming out. Like, that's the only way that I can describe it. That's the joy coming out.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I'm so glad that you shared that. I think that it's almost like you have two things that you're battling. You're battling kind of maybe what other people are seeing and thinking about you on the outside and the way they respond to you. But then, probably the bigger thing really is how you feel about yourself and how you see yourself, and how you carry yourself in the world as well. And it sounds like it made a difference for you, big difference when you started doing that inner work and carrying yourself with a different kind of confidence, so
absolutely.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. And that's something that I work with my clients with, is you have to name it. So I named my cleft. Her name is Big Bertha. And
Big Bertha.
Big Bertha. And Big Bertha lives in my toes, and me and her go at it. But because calling her that, it was able to separate, because that's not, Iva doesn't feel like that. Iva is real, she's sophisticated, and she is joyous. And that's who I'm going to show up as. Big Bertha is the one that feels shame. The Big Bertha is the one that thinks that everybody is staring at her and all of these negative things. And so it was able for me to gift forgiveness to her, because it's like, I understand that those things happen to you. And I'm sorry that those things happened to you. But let me show you what's possible. Let me show you what real sophisticated joy looks like. And I want you to come along with me. That's why she lives in my toes. But she can't be the one that is controlling everything. Like, I'm bigger than my Cleft. Thank you for what you did. Thank you for protecting me when I was young. But it's now time for me to take control. So I really do work with them on, they love that exercise of naming their Cleft, because you have to. You have to.
So what are some of the things that you struggled with that cleft palate? I know that, there can be issues with, swallowing and speech, but tell us about some of your experiences, that you struggled with growing up.
Absolutely. I experienced all of those. I experienced the more cosmetic things of, me and Peppa Pig got a lot in common, and I cannot whistle. And I do feel a little way about this. I still, to this day, I do feel a little way about the fact that I can't whistle.
Feel like you got robbed?
Yes.
Well, let me tell you, I don't know how to whistle either.
See,
okay,
so. I'm telling you, the more that I find out that other people cannot whistle, it does make me feel a little... Yes.
Yep, there's nothing wrong with you.
I can't whistle, and that was a source of shame. Learning to blow a bubble was a real big struggle, because again, I didn't have the roof of my mouth. So that's how you blow a bubble. You have to put it.
Yeah,
so that was
and those are things you don't think about.
You don't think about at all. I had tubes in my ear, placed in my ear to help with drainage, and they fell out, but it was always just a thing. And I can remember when you do sleepovers, you do little pranks, and I forget what they poured down my ear, but I freaked out because, like, you can do a lot of pranks to me and I can roll with the punches, but anything like that, I knew the severity of it. It's like, I'm built a little different. Yeah. You can't do that.
Right.
That was one.
Right.
And then my personal favorite of Sally sold shells by the seashore. My speech pathologist would be so proud of the fact that I can say this, because language, people don't think that language goes into it. So those are some of the more cosmetic things that having a cleft I dealt with. But then the personal things. For the audience that doesn't know, or if you haven't seen my picture, I am an African American woman, and oftentimes cleft is not prevalent in the African American community. So for a very long time, in fact, it wasn't until I was 30, I didn't see another cleft woman that was African American.
Wow.
So that's a shock, and just really having that question of why me? Why me? And dealing with that, and again, being in that same community of wanting acceptance, and it's like, you look different. So having that and experiencing bullying, and it's just because, girl, we don't know what that is, and that's what kids do. If they aren't familiar with it, it's different. So dealing with that a lot. But that was like the main thing. Those are like the main things.
Yeah, that must have been very isolating as well, just to not have anyone that you felt like was sharing the experiences that you were going through.
Absolutely. Like, I will admit, like, I had a great support system. Like, my family was absolutely amazing. I was never made to feel different or othered. And then I had a group of friends. We call ourselves the Fantastic Four, being friends since the age of 2. And they were always very supportive. And, no one was ever going to talk about me. Or my other friend, Amanda, would be the first one to say anything. And that was great. But still, it would have been nice to have someone else that I could share certain things with, because there's certain experiences that I can tell you about it, and yes, you're witnessing it with me, but you just don't know how I feel. You don't know how I feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's definitely
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. You talked about how you were having some of these surgeries at different points in time. You must have
Yeah.
been in like elementary and middle
Mm-hmm.
school and even high school with your mouth wired shut and, and drinking
Oh
insurance, you
gosh,
know.
that
What was
was.
that experience like for you? How are people responding to you? Did you struggle with bullying at any point?
So, definitely struggled with bullying, but it was on twofold. So, on the traditional level of bullying, this is one that I would just never forget. So, again, as I said earlier, my mother and parent, like father, you were not different. I was not different. Anything that any other child was going to do, I was going to do. So, my family was very musical. My brother played an instrument. Iva was going to play an instrument. So, I was in the band. I could not play that flute, but I could hum along and fake it. So I was coming back from
They gave you the flute.
They gave me the flute, and I was just, mind you, and that's the thing. That's the thing. As an adult woman, I had a conversation with my mom, and I'm like, now you realize this is the same child that cannot blow a whistle, but y'all gave me a flute. It doesn't add up. So, but you know what? Whatever. But it's fine. I faked it. I faked it till I did not make it, but that's beside the point. So I'm coming back from a band recital in the 5th grade, and I'll never forget. I had a classmate that he was walking ahead of me, and down the hall it's 2 classes of 2nd graders, and as I begin to walk down the hall, they start laughing and pointing and just like, oh, what happened to your face, and just anything that you could think of. So at that age, I gotta be like 8, 9, but I can remember the real of me and the sophistication of me was like, you cannot cry right now. You cannot cry. So I'm like walking with my head held high, and my classmate in front of me, he turns around and he gives you that look of a mix of pity and also a sense of like, I'm sorry that I can't and won't help you. And I look at him like, I got it, but that is a feeling that I would just never forget that. I would just never forget that. So on that end, so that was one part of the bullying. But then on the other part of the bullying, I would say is some of it was me. I can be honest and admit that it was me. As I said, I had big Bertha controlling a lot of stuff, and I was very defensive. So it was like, I'm gonna get you before you could say anything about me. And which in turn, a lot of people did not like me. And as an adult woman, I could understand. I didn't make myself likable.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Because you felt like you had to protect yourself.
Absolutely. And this is something that I talk about, is like making sure not to weaponize your cleft. Because I would call out my cleft first, and then feel like I could say anything to you because you couldn't talk about the girl with the cleft. And that's not right. That's not right.
Right.
It's not right.
Yeah.
It's just not right.
Yeah, those are tough experiences to have gone through, and it's, sometimes we look at little kids and you're like, oh, they're so innocent and so cute, but they can be so mean from such a young age.
Like just little things, or the occasional shove and push, little things of antagonizing, or as like now, why I'm a big stickler about saying my name correctly, of wanting to call me Ivy, like poison ivy, don't touch her because you'll get it. Little things like that. Like I never.
And they always just find the creative
things.
Little things that just stick in there.
But kids are cruel. Kids are very cruel.
They really can be. And you, unfortunately, had a lot of life experience to kind of draw from writing this book that you wrote called Bully Who. And the full
Yes.
name of it is Bully Who, a how-to guide to recognize who's bullying you and who you are bullying.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about how you wrote that and why and for who.
So this one was actually, I had to get some things off my chest because being able to admit that on some of it, I was a bully to other people and that I also was a bully to myself. People don't often, are not often aware that you can be a bully to your own self. You can absolutely, another buzzword that people like to say is your inner critic. But if you sit down, and I talk about this in the book, if you sit down and were to track your thoughts for a week, and if you were to read it back and you would be like, who was she talking to? You might be bullying yourself. You might just be bullying yourself. Or something else that I talk about is your bully could be a family member. And they don't know. Sometimes they're not knowingly, that's just how they were talked to. That could be a thing. Or for parents, being able to recognize that, you know what? My child is the bully. And what I can do, little tips that I can do to work on them with that. And so it's just important that people are aware of what bullying is and is not.
Yeah, and I like what I liked about the way you wrote it. It's so thorough, like a whole description of, what is bullying, what are the different types of bullying, children who are bullied. What if your child is to bully themselves? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what bullying is and how parents can kind of recognize this in their kids.
Absolutely. I love little girls who are assertive. I have two nieces, and they will tell you what they want, how they want. That's fine. Please be assertive.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. They're not bossy. They just know what they want. But it's another thing when they are being aggressively and consistently. It's that repetitiveness, and it is the intention of the act. That's the biggest thing. It's that repetition and the intention of the act that classifies
so with bullying
more bullying
versus
like
bullying
teasing.
would be kind of the intention to
Absolutely. And the repetitive, like it's repeated, especially when it's like to one person or one group. Yeah.
So for a parent who realizes that their child is the bully, how do they address that situation? How do they nip that habit in the bud? What should they be doing?
So first I'm going to say correct in kindness. And I said that in there. I was like, because you also need to be okay with accepting that if your child is the bully, they're getting that from somewhere. Either in some way, shape, or form, someone is doing that to them and they are acting it out. I'm not saying that it's you, the parent. That's not what I'm saying. But just be aware, like, eventually they're gonna unknowingly try to bully you, the parent. They're gonna say something that will be like ooh, and that is your cue to say, hey, why did you say that? That hurt mommy's feelings, or that hurt daddy's feelings, and just see what their response was. Because again, if they're quickly remorseful, okay, that's perfect. Let's get in and say, yeah, when you say things like this, it can hurt people's feelings, and that's not what we want to do, right? Because in this household, we like to treat everybody with kindness, reiterating what is acceptable characteristics just from mommy and daddy or whoever in this household. It makes them want to emulate that too. If it's different of, no, that's what I said, okay, why did you want to hurt my feelings? Because you're gonna have to start asking some questions. And again, you can ask these questions based on their age range. But that's the beauty of kids. They'll tell you. They will definitely tell you. Get them to do a project or something like coloring or painting or while they're eating, and just talk to them. They're gonna tell them themselves. Like they will tell on themselves. But you have to be willing to have the conversation. Like that's the first part. You can't run away from it, especially if you are seeing it. Also, I will say, if you see it, you can't joke about it. You can't joke and be like, all right, little bully. All right. Because you're reinforcing that it's okay. So those are like the biggest things, especially for kids, because kids are they're just playing out what they've seen somewhere.
Yeah, I like that. I like kind of reinforcing what the values are in your household, and kind of being serious about it, setting that line, that boundary, because at the end of the day, kids are still in learning mode, you know, and they need that reinforcement as well to say what is right and what is wrong. Yeah, so that's very useful information.
Or even like you can use their favorite character. Oh, would like Doc McStuffin, would she do that? No, she would never do that. Like that's what I've had to say to my niece. Like, she was like, oh, she would never. You're right, she wouldn't. So we shouldn't do that either, right? No, auntie, we shouldn't do that.
I like that. I like that.
You know, and so that way you're not saying that they're bad. You're not, discrediting them, and you're allowing them to use their own judgment and, assessment, which is great because you're building up their confidence to do so.
Yeah.
And it's funny.
That's creative.
It's you have with kids, you got to be creative.
And then in your coaching sessions, so I know that some of what you focus on as well is bullying, and when people have been bullying, trying to give them some strategies for how they can deal with those situations. So what kind of things are you talking about in those sessions, especially with kind of children and adolescents, if you when you work with them?
My biggest component is talking about practice, like making sure that you have responses already ready, because it is, again, I like to be in the gym, so I'm going to use another gym reference. But when you do certain exercises over and over and over, it becomes repetitive. You don't have to think about it. It just comes out. And it's the same thing for a child. And as a parent, you're like, well, how do I do that? It could be on the way to riding on the way to school or at home. You can put it in a part of a song, as a dance. But just so they have certain responses ready for when a bully does approach them, they already have together. They know what they're going to say. You can practice with them. And it just makes the child feel more confident that if it should happen, they know what to do. They know what to do.
I think that's really good. It's really
and
good.
And then also just making sure that they know how they know how to recognize it when it's happening to somebody else. Because that can be another question that you ask. Okay, if you saw your best friend being bullied, what would you do? You know,
that's a huge, bystander bullying in a way. People who see something but they don't say anything.
We talked about that.
You kind of talked about
levels.
that. Yeah. You talked about that when you talked about those kids that were making fun of you in the hallway, and someone recognized that it was happening, and he was like, nope, I'm not touching this.
Yeah, he couldn't. And you know what? And it's funny because as we grew up, I always remember he treated me so differently from that time. It wasn't a bad difference, but I think he always just maybe felt a little bit like, I didn't help. And I even talked about a situation where I didn't help a girl in the same, because I was just like, girl, I got enough going on myself. So I was a bystander. I was a bystander, and I feel so bad about that.
And it can be hard because, obviously kids are dealing with lots of things, like you said. You're dealing with things on your own. You don't want to become a victim of bullying yourself, so there's that element of self-protection. But when parents are able to have these conversations with kids and say, it's not okay when you see this happening to someone else either. You have to move beyond yourself and be able to help and address that when it happens. I think that can be so powerful.
And for my adults, whether it's for your child or for yourself, making sure to document or just write down, because when it's first happening, you're like, this isn't for real. This is not. It's just, you might think it's teasing. And you want to be able to have different dates and moments and say, okay, as a one-off, yes, it was teasing. Two, okay, maybe they have a different sense of humor. I'm a third striker. By the third strike, I'm calling the game. Let's call it. And what it is bullying.
Yeah.
We don't have to go past that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So what else can you tell us about your coaching sessions, and how do you get in contact with people with cleft palate or kids with cleft palate who want to have this confidence coaching experience with you?
So yes, they can always go on my page or find me, RealSophisticatedJoy, on Instagram. My email is iva@RealSophisticatedJoy.com. And I love to be a resource because, like I said, this is something that I wish that I would have had growing up. So to be that now, but like most of my sessions, it's a 7-week session, and we go from getting real, sophistication, activation, celebrate, and celebrating that joy that we found in our cleft and in our confidence. And it is a beautiful process. They go from, like the introduction says, from contempt to confidence, having decreased anxiety and lessening of insecurity, so that they can go and live just a joyful life. Like, I'll do it forever. And as long as there's people who need me to do it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That is so inspirational, and I hope and pray that you have the capacity to continue to do that and continue to reach as many people as you can with this, because again, just having the support of someone who has gone through something similar and can really kind of speak to your situation can be so massive for people who are just dealing with something that makes them different. So I love what you're doing, and I wish you all the success with that.
Thank you. Yes, and I appreciate that, because this is where I'm at now, of just being like praying for expansion so that way I can help more. And so being a good steward in that one.
Yep.
So it's like, okay. But again, if it means that I'm helping someone, I'll get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. Well, you have shared so much joy and realism and sophistication with us today, Ms. Iva Ballou.
I'm a woman.
It was, yes. You have shared the phenomenal woman that you are with us in this podcast, and I'm so grateful to have had you on here. If you can leave us with one thing, if you can tell us, what is the thing that you love about yourself the most?
It is my joy. And I want people to know, when I say my joy, I'm not saying that I'm happy all day, every day, because I'm not. Okay? I'm not. I started off the name of my company as Real for a reason, because there are some days where it is real rough over here. You know? I'm a person that when I feel an emotion, I feel it. So that sometimes that means that I feel sad. And that's okay. I allow myself to feel it. Yeah. But what makes me so happy is that I know ultimately, like, I have my sense of joy. And no matter what this moment feels right now, that's not going anywhere. It's never, it might get a little small, but it's never going anywhere. And it's mine. Like, no one else can take that. So that is what makes me be so confident. Like, my confidence grows from within me. How can you not be joyous about that? How can you not be joyous about that? So that is the one thing that I love about me. It is just my own real sophisticated joy, and I love helping others get theirs.